Hi all, welcome to The Incompetent Gardener. I'm Justin. I will be your guide on today's travesty. So today we're going to be talking about our raised bed garden, specifically our bush beans. So I've got two garden beds right now that I have bush beans planted in. I've got two different varieties. I'm actually doing this through the Alabama Extension Program, helping them try to figure out what seed cultivars grow better in Alabama. So we have two different varieties. We have the Desperado and the Blue Lake 274. And I've run into a couple of issues with this season's growth. So if we'll take a look here real quick, you'll notice in this cultivar, there's not a lot of growth. I've got 6 or 7 total sprouts, as opposed to the Desperado is looking absolutely gorgeous. I've got 34 sprouts over there so far versus 6 or 7. Now, part of this program is to find out what kind of pests and diseases these different cultivars come in contact with and are affected by. So one thing that we have learned is in this process, part of the reason why we're having such an issue with the Blue Lake 274 is a pest that's shown up and is absolutely decimating all of my sprouts here, but leaving the Desperados alone. And that pest is the cutworm. So the cutworm's a small little caterpillar looking like worm thing, burrows down into the soil, and it'll come out in the evening twilight or morning twilight times and literally saw its way through the stalk of the plant. It loves bush beans, peas, squash, basically any kind of vining plant in that early sprout stage. In this instance, it has taken root specifically with my Blue Lake 274s, but it's left the Desperado alone. And what this thing will do is it'll come up and just literally scissor right through the stalk of the plant. It'll drop it over, it'll have a nice little meal, and then leave everything else to die and make you really, really sad in the morning when you come out and all of your sprouts are dead. So I've come across a couple of different ways that we can combat this. Now, I don't use any kind of pesticides in my garden. I'm trying to do everything organically, no chemicals. Everything has to be a natural remedy. So I've come across a couple easy ways. Now, the first way you can do this is manually disperse of this. You can actually dig down into the soil and try to find where it's burrowing. They usually stay within the top couple of inches of soil. So during the daytime, you dig up the soil, you find them, you kill them. I still have a lot of beans in here that I'm hoping will still sprout. So I don't want to go and start digging up the soil, disturb any roots that have already set, or any radicals that are emerging, or any beans that are trying to grow. So I'm going to go with one of the other two ways. Now, my first recommendation is putting a physical barrier in there. This has to be done once it's actually sprouted. I like to use a paper towel tube because I can cut that down to the sizes that I need pretty easily. If I use a toilet paper tube, I'm not gonna get 2 of these out of it. I'll get 1. But a paper towel tube, I can get about 4 of these little sections here, about 2 inches. And what I'm gonna do is once I've cut my tube, I'm just gonna insert it over my sprout and work it down about 1 inch into the soil, just so that the leaves of my sprouts are over the top. And what that does is by going about 1 inch or 2 down, it creates a barrier down below the surface of the soil to protect that plant without disturbing the roots. And then by allowing the leaves to come up above that tube, they can still get the sun, they can still utilize the chlorophyll in their leaves for photosynthesis and help feed that plant and help it grow. And then the tube's wide enough, none of these stalks are going to get that thick to where that tube's going to be a hindrance. And even if it were to become a hindrance, with waterings, that tube will break down. Now, once your plants get to about this size, the cutworms generally will leave them alone. They're kind of too big for them. So they're looking for those small sprouts, those easy meals. The other thing that I will do is I will take diatomaceous earth and I will sprinkle that around the base of my plants. This is a natural mineral, and it is ground down to a fine powder. And what happens is when those cutworms emerge and they go through that diatomaceous earth, it coats them. I mean, it's got the consistency of an extremely fine, like baking flour. So those cutworms will come through this diatomaceous earth, it will coat them, and then it will just suck all of the moisture out of them and dehydrate them to death. You can use the diatomaceous earth without the tubes and the physical barriers, but it does take a little bit to work because dying from dehydration is not a fast process. So I like to do the barrier and the diatomaceous earth. As a result, you've got a physical barrier that those cutworms can't get through, and you've got the diatomaceous earth to help dehydrate and eradicate them as well. So I kind of like that twofold method. It works good with peas, it'll work good with squash, as long as you get it on there before, or the tubes on there before they get too big. You don't want to damage any of the leaves in doing so, because then you'll end up killing the sprout yourself. So yeah, that's how I like to combat cutworms. Let me know what you think.